Okay, to go deeper into the weeds of colonization. And when I say colonization, I'm using that term um, very broadly because in history, when I say colonization or when history is talking about the colonization of black people, they use it in the same way in which imperial uh, countries set up colonies in the West. And that's an inaccurate, almost a misrepresentation of what was actually going on when black people were being colonized out of the United States. Um, there was a relationship between the colonizor, the imperial country, France, Netherlands, Spain, Great Britain, and the colonizee, the 13 colonies in North America, Haiti, and different ones in South America and throughout the West. There was a cultural exchange, there was an economic exchange, there was a economic exchange, there was many things that was moved across the Atlantic back and forth when it dealt with a colony. Many people call that the Columbian Exchange. It's a book about that. Check that book out. It'll help you frame, this dynamic of Eastern and Western movement of information, reality, ideas, and artifacts. But the word colonization, when it came to what America was doing with black folks, not the same thing. There was not an infrastructure set up for where they were sending black folks. First in Liberia, second in Haiti. There was no anticipation of an economic or cultural exchange. These people were being sent there to become citizens there and have no other dealings with the United States. And I argue that there was a crafty use of words purposely to hide the intent of the country because racism had gotten to be an international issue. It did make the country look bad. And there was a cognitive dissonance associated with how American whites functioned with Native Americans, Mexicans, and black people. So euphemistic language was regularly used. Perfect example, when the Treaty of Guadalupe was the result of the Mexican-American War. It's not a treaty if it's at gunpoint. It's not a treaty if you're going to die if this doesn't happen. A treaty is an agreement. This was an agreement. Colonizing is a subset of my community somewhere else. I'm moving folk. So just like the American government didn't want to say, yeah, well, we annexed Texas, look up how Texas entered the Union. Have you ever heard of a country being well, Texas was a country at the time, but of a state being annexed? That just means they took it. Which brings about a whole lot of immigration stuff that I think if people had more knowledge of history, they would address the border issue a whole lot differently. But for that, we're going to pass. They took from Texas to California, but historically it said it's been annexed. And the rest of that was part of a treaty where they were given $15 million. Well, you give me $15 million for something I don't want to sell. That's not a treaty. You're going to tell me what you're going to give me, and you're going to kill me until I agree what that is. But again, we're talking about the colonization part. But I'm saying this was not the only dynamic that was going on. The only one that was just blatant and frank at the same time was the Native American Removal Act, Indian Removal Act. They were just removing them. Now, what they could have called it was Native American Genocide Act. That would have been more direct and true and clear. But again, we can say at this point, removal was a euphemism at that point. But we'll find that language existing in the three major groups that American leadership felt did not belong here anymore. This is our country. We're moving all the way. We're going to be a continental country. These people don't belong. Now, it was not just these three groups. These were the non-white groups, because poor white people did not matter. White women did not matter. And whiteness was a dynamic independent of itself. Until the 30s and 40s, Irish were not considered white. Jewish people were not considered white. Italians were not considered white. Irish, I don't know if I said Irish already, they were not considered white. So whiteness expanded over different period of times, and this is not the first time it happened. This happened in South America far earlier than it happened in North America. There is a whitening of areas, primarily because of the Haitian Revolution. The whites were outnumbered by the blacks. They brought in so many slaves to make money that they didn't keep up count. And somebody just, either Jean-Jacques Dessalines or Toussaint Louverture, say, hey, wait a minute, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, one white person. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they had a 10-to-1 ratio. They figured we can win this. And that was how the census began, where they started keeping account so they would have a racial balance, so these types of overturning of power would stop. But in the history, as you follow Negro colonization from the late 1700s through the 19th century, there's always this mention by historians that black people even supported it. Not true. Not true. Okay. Colonization is white-led. And I believe it's in Tomick's book, Beverly Tomick, where she specifies the difference between colonization, which is white people telling black folks, we'll let you go if you leave, or we'll pay for it if you leave, and this is where you need to go. This is how you're going to get there. And we have set up the accommodations to the extent to which we feel they need to be set up. We've done that. And immigration with an E, not with an I. We have, when we're talking about border and people coming in and out of the country, that's immigration with an I. Immigration with an E is when black folk were moving themselves. When they were saying, even if the black folks went to the American Colonization Society, that is their decision, their agency being exercised to move about where they so chose. Okay, that is migration. So when you hear the misrepresentation of black folks supporting Negro colonization, not true. Lincoln's involvement in colonization is what I argue to be why this topic or this policy is so important. One of the first things Lincoln did when he became president was recognize Haiti and Liberia. That also was the place that he tried to send black folk. They had already been sending black folk to Liberia, and they tried to send them to Haiti. And it was only at the failure of the Haitian colonization attempt that they looked at it and said, look, this we've been trying to do this for over 100 years. This is not working. Or about 100 years. This is not working. And they came up with the penal slavery that we exist in today, that is stated in the 13th Amendment. A lot of people have not read the 13th Amendment clearly. It's a very good documentary on Netflix called 13th. Please look at it. Google the 13th Amendment. It's very short. It's just no more than 6 sentences. Read the 13th Amendment. It says you can have slavery. It says you cannot have slavery except if it's punishable by a crime. So except means, in this case, you can do it. So we have slavery in our society today. There's a reason why America has the highest rate of incarceration amongst minorities. They have the highest rate of incarceration in the world. They had to maintain the original business model that made the United States grow to a superpower in less than 100 years. Low labor cost, high profits. So that is the key to colonizing Black folks and why that is so important and how that issue connects to all of the subsequent 13th Amendment obstacles of oppression this country has experienced because that model has been forced to maintain in place. Even today with mass incarceration, it disproportionately affects what group? That's not an accident. Huge policy, Negro colonization.